recording's in progress. I just didn't hear it. Hi, everybody. Good morning. For those of you I haven't met, my name is Fusho. It's really nice to be here on a rainy spring day. Nice to see everybody online. I know that many of us consider the space, and even when we tune in online, that space here at the Village Zendo to be a refuge. And really feels like that to me today. And I hope for those of you who are new here that you can experience it as that as well. These zazenkais are really important opportunities to just settle down, take a big deep breath, have a few good periods of sitting quietly. And I know for a lot of us it really feels important and needed these days with all these things coming at us. So this is our opportunity to really let things settle, let them go, set them down, let them rest. See if we can drop our body and mind. We're having a loud air filter. It's a place where we practice allowing some space to arise and to set down the discriminating mind, if possible, when possible, so that we can rest in not knowing. And then awake freshly to the rest of our lives and what's happening and what's arising right in front of us and what is really happening in this moment. And these days it can be challenging to be present to that if we're worried about a lot of things that are happening out there. The challenge can be, it's a wide array of distractions, but if we're worried about something here, are we missing a beloved one who's in front of us? Are we overlooking what's happening in our own day-to-day space in an interaction that we might be taking for granted? I was texting with my sister about our house, about a delivery. We were trying to pick a washing machine out for our family house. And I was also getting ready to interview someone that I thought was a pretty high-profile guest for a podcast that I was hosting. So we were texting and ended up texting him some selections of washers just to see what he thought. My ideas about pricing and everything. And that's a small example, right? But when we're not paying attention or we're being tugged around by strong emotions or discriminating ideas that are very powerful, it can be a matter of life and death. And that's what we're seeing a little bit happening these days if we're looking, depending on where we're looking. So we come and sit, and then we're able to respond to our lives however we want to do that, by using our voice or our expression. Discriminating response. It's a tricky word, discriminating. But a bunch of us did protest last weekend together, and some here in New York and some all over, just to say, hey, we don't love what's happening. We're feeling a little bit under threat here, and we're raising our voices to say we don't agree with that. Have to say it's feels like a new old theory that's arising, new idea or new argument that's not really new when you look back at our history, that somehow honoring our differences and diversity is stupid and no longer important. And in fact, the new idea is that is what's discriminatory. So it's being turned around. on its head, and we've seen different versions of this throughout our history. I mean, we had a civil war. This country has been arguing about rights for a very long time. It seems to be coming back around. There's a new theory that if you're uplifting people who are minorities or, have differences, that's discriminating. So I can only speak from my own experience as a woman, but apparently that's also now, again, a minority, even though we're a little bit more than, people who identify as women are a little bit more than half the population of the world, but okay. I was just reading, there's a lot, I know there's a lot, so I'm just gonna try to stay in that lane. But the plan has been, and it's being enacted to sort of focus on anti-white racism. And I think it's gendering or anything like that. So some of the things that have been happening, including lots of firings of minorities and women who are in charge or who have, become leaders or teachers in their own right. And one example is Admiral Lisa Franchetti, first female officer to rise to the Navy's top job of Chief Naval Operations, has been replaced. There's quite a few of them. We could go through the list. But she received her commission in 1985 through the Naval Reserve Officer Training Corps at Northwestern. And then 7 years after, that was just 7 years after the Navy ended its prohibition on women serving on ships at sea. She became a surface warfare officer at a time when women joining the fleet in that role were typically limited to serving on auxiliary ships and non-combat vessels. But that changed, and it opened the door for officers like Admiral Franchetti to compete equally with their male counterparts. And that was 1993 that happened. They weren't allowed to be on submarines, however, until 2010. So she spent roughly half her 40-year career at sea and rose to command the destroyer USS Ross and later a destroyer squadron, 2 aircraft carrier strike groups, all naval forces in Korea, and the 6th Fleet in the Mediterranean Sea. And at the time, they cited, and then she was promoted. She became the 33rd Chief of Naval Operations in 2023, and she was the first woman to have a permanent seat as a member of the Joint Chiefs. And at that time, the White House cited her extensive operational and policy experience as among the reasons for promotion. But no longer. So I have a list of other people and other examples, where we're seeing this happening. But I thought, so these policies are also to go through the archives and the records and just scrub or delete any sort of historical record of anything like this that's happened in the past that might be referencing diversity. And we know, so chief scientists at NASA are being eliminated. The thing is that any sort of words that come up, somehow a reference to World War II Medal of Honor recipient Enola Gay aircraft, that reference was deleted because of the word gay. I think they might have put it back, I'm not sure. There's a page in some of the archives about Women's History Month and all-female crews, deleted. Those have been deleted. And so on and so forth. And there's the library, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth's office has been purging books at the Naval Academy that are critical of racism, but they have preserved the volumes defending white power. So, for example, gone is I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, Maya Angelou's transformative best-selling memoir. But 2 copies of Mein Kampf by Adolf Hitler are still on the shelves. Memorializing the Holocaust, Janet Jacobs' 2010 examination of how a few female victims of the Holocaust have been portrayed, that's gone. But The Camp of the Saints is still on the shelves, and that's a novel which envisions a takeover of the Western world by immigrants from developing countries. I'm just saying, I think we need to stay very awake and alert. And I also thought that what we could do, because we are here in a Zendo talking about Zen, is take a look at our own lineage and our own studies. And somebody that we always turn to and that we were chanting the name to is the lineage founder in Japanese, in our Soto lineage. It's Raihai Dogen. And we tend to turn to a lot of his writings, and we study Dogen's work quite a bit. And we've read quite a bit of Shobogenzo. But for those that don't know, he lived in the 1200s, and really emphasized the meaning of impermanence. He had studied in China, and then he actually was born in the time of civil war in Japan. He was greatly influenced by Japanese culture that emphasized coming to terms with the vicissitudes of life, always changing, constant change. And some of his works respond to the impact of famines and natural disasters and human conflicts and war in a whirlwind of complex social and political entanglements. So, sound similar? According to established accounts, he was born into an aristocratic family at a time when Japan was being plagued by ongoing civil warfare. And he experienced profound sorrow and tragedy at an early age, as his father, a prominent general, died when he was 2, and his beautiful mother, a mistress of the father, passed away when he was 7. And it said when he saw the smoke of the incense rising and vanishing during his mother's funeral, he was deeply moved by an awareness of the inevitability of death and the pervasiveness of impermanence. So that's the can we let go when we're sitting in this refuge and recognize that things are constantly transforming, and then turn to meet that reality. Even when we're stirred up, can we come home? And one of the ways I come home, we've been talking about, I've been hearing people turn to some of our teachings and koans, and I do return to the Hidden Lamp quite often these days, which is a collection of koans about women in Buddhism, and the commentaries are by women. And there was one that I liked the title of that I turned to, called Dogen Sets the Record Straight. So 13th century, Master Raihai Dogen said to his monks, don't worry, it's all connected. There are foolish monks who make a vow never to look at a woman. Is this vow based on the teachings of the Buddhas, or the teachings of the non-Buddhists, or the teachings of Mara? What are the inherent faults of women? And what are the inherent virtues of men? There are unwholesome men, there are unwholesome women. Hoping to hear the Dharma and leave the household does not depend on being female or male. And I would add, what about even the wider spectrum, everything in between, and experiences that don't identify with either, or that identify with both? He says, in specific reference to women being teachers or recognized as equals, before becoming free from delusion, men and women are equally not free from delusion. At the time of being free from delusion and realizing the truth, there is no difference between men and women. If you vow never to look at a woman, must you then abandon women when you chant, beings are numberless, I vow to save them? If you do so, you are not a bodhisattva. How can you call it the Buddha's compassion? So this passage is from the Raihai Tokusui, and I found it's in the Shobogen, so in our little Dokusan room in our library, which has real books of record, which we're going to keep safe for recording purposes. And some people consider it a real celebration, this essay of women's strengths and equality as Zen practitioners and teachers. So I know that this can sound obvious to some of us because the Village Zendo was founded by 2 women. But I don't want to take anything for granted, and I just want to be very clear about this. The commentary in the woman, the hidden lamp, the women's writing. It's by Sobun Catherine Thanes. She was a Soto Zen priest who practiced and trained at San Francisco Zen Center with Suzuki Roshi. And she was the former abbot of Santa Cruz Zen Center. And she passed away in 2012. But her commentary, she writes, as I was considering this passage, I found a line from Rumi. There is a man and woman and a third thing, too, in us. Maybe that sums up my exploration of this koan about men and women and their prospects for liberation in this life. I see how completely Dogen identified the mind of discrimination and exclusion when it comes to Buddhist practice. In the Raihai Tokusui, he makes clear that we are all equal in our capacity for awakening. And she goes on to question, even though we know this to be true, or we might agree or not agree, that even the way that we interact with people and teachers in a formal setting, just to take a look at that, are we interacting with them differently because of their identity or their gender? Because when we drop away and before we come back to discriminating and definitions of good, bad, male, female, all different everything, right, wrong, there is no discriminating. And as we explore the roles today, we're finding that opposites include each other. Yes includes no, and no includes yes. Males and females include each other, psychologically, emotionally, sometimes physically. A single term can be inadequate, in fact, to express the complexity of our physical, emotional, and behavioral characteristics. And Dogen says, in acquiring the Dharma, all acquire the Dharma equally. All should pay homage to and hold in esteem one who has acquired the Dharma. Do not make an issue of whether it is a man or a woman. This is the most wondrous law of the Bodhidharma. He also encourages us to look to everything that we could possibly see in front of us as teachers. So not just people, but rocks and trees and mountains can also teach us. I think at that time, we can guess, and we know about Japanese culture, that misogyny was quite rampant in the 13th century. So it feels pretty radical that he was saying this back then, and now here we are. I think we still need to say it again. Monks at that time didn't want to bow to nuns, and they argued that they had lower spiritual faculties than men. But Dogen said, not true. And he criticized people who allow social hierarchies to interfere with who they take as a teacher. And he zeroed in on that, on what the student's relationship to women should be. He said, he used several stories from China to illustrate the correct relationship. In the first, a monk vows to learn Dharma even from a 7-year-old girl. And the second, a monk is brought to complete enlightenment by a female teacher who completes what his male teacher left unfinished. He says, there's no doubt that there are many who will not bow to a woman or nun, even if they have acquired the Dharma and transmitted it. And since they do not study it, they are like animals far removed from the Buddhas and ancestors. Since they are already endowed with merit, pervading and illuminating the 10 directions, he's talking about goddesses, what could it mean to speak of boundaries to exclude them? People who defend these sort of unorthodox ideas that the women are different are even more stupid than the little fox who tries to prevent humans from violating his lair. I know that we've heard some of this messaging before. I just felt very strongly that in this time, as we're trying to bear witness and stay awake, that we could just recognize what might be happening and remember that our lineage doesn't agree with some of this messaging, I would say. And it all seems to come back around, so let's keep up the conversation. Let's keep speaking up for ourselves. And let's remember what Bodhisattva Nina Simone wrote in 1964. She wrote, "Picket lines, school boycotts, they try to say it's a communist plot. All I want is equality for my sister, my brother, my people, and me. Yes, you lied to me all these years. You told me to wash and clean my ears and talk real fine, just like a lady, and you'd stop calling me Sister Sadie. Oh, but this whole country's full of lies. You're all gonna die and die like flies. I don't trust you anymore. You keep on saying, go slow, go slow. But that's just the trouble, too slow. Desegregation, too slow. Mass participation, too slow. Reunification, too slow. Do things gradually, too slow. But bring more tragedy, too slow. Why don't you see it? Why don't you feel it? I don't know. I don't know."